Welcome to Colorado State University's podcast, The Audit, where host Stacy Nick talks with CSU faculty about topics ranging from their latest research to current events.
In March, a New York State judge ruled that a lawsuit could go forward against several social media companies, alleging that the platforms contributed to the radicalization of a gunman who killed 10 people at a grocery store in Buffalo, New York in 2022. The lawsuit claims that companies like Meta, Reddit, and 4chan profit from the racist, antisemitic, and violent material displayed on their platforms in order to maximize user engagement. However, the companies say they are instead merely message boards containing third-party content and should not be held liable for what others post. While the case itself won't likely see the inside of a courtroom for years, it has sparked a debate on just how culpable and calculating social media platforms really are. Hamed Koury-Saremi is an assistant professor of computer information systems in Colorado State University's College of Business. He recently collaborated on a new theory that social media misinformation might actually be taking a page from Shakespearean tragedies. So you and your collaborator, former CSU Associate Professor Nick Roberts, put together what you called the 3T theory of social media-driven misinformation. The 3 T's being tragedy, truth, and technology. Let's start by having you kind of break that down for us a bit.
So this is a paper that was published in fall of 2023 in the Journal of the Association for Information Systems. In this paper, we have borrowed concepts and sort of stories from Shakespearean tragedy, such as Othello, in order to explain a process through which an ordinary, rational person gets exposed to misinformation on social media and then start developing false beliefs. And throughout this process, those false beliefs gets reinforced and finally end up taking some detrimental actions that have detrimental consequences for the person and for the society. Probably more importantly, then we have talked about the role of social media in accelerating and facilitating this process. We have talked about 4 different properties of social media, which we have called them feeding, signaling, matching, and sensing, and how these 4 properties essentially facilitate this process. The idea of this paper started when Nick and I've known Nick for many years. He's a good friend. Nick and I were meeting over a dinner at a conference in 2019, and Nick has a background in English literature. And it was a couple of years after the start of what, unfortunately, we are seeing these days, a conspiracy trend. It was a couple of years after the pizzagate, which was one of the probably the biggest political conspiracies. Pizzagate started in spring of 2016. It was sort of following the hacking of the Clinton campaign's emails. And the conspiracy, of course, it has been debunked time and time over. But what this conspiracy was saying was that the New York Police Department have found links between the officials in Democratic Party and some restaurants across the United States that they are engaging in human trafficking and child sex rings and those sort of things. And what ended up happening in case of the Pizzagate was that one of the restaurants that had been mentioned was called Comet Ping Pong. It's a small pizzeria in Washington, D.C., and in December of 2016, a person called Edgar Welch, a 28-year-old from North Carolina, decided, which was affected, had seen these sort of misinformation, this conspiracy theory on social media. It spread vastly on social media, some of the social media platforms, such as 4chan, 8chan, Twitter, Reddit. He had been exposed to them, and then he decided to sort of self-investigate this particular restaurant by himself. So he took his own AR-15 rifle, went to the restaurant, and he ended up firing 3 shots in the restaurant while the customers and the people were in the restaurant. He was arrested shortly after by the police, and he mentioned that how he got exposed to this sort of conspiracy theory, which was the social media platforms. And Nick told me that when he looks at these stories, because, I mean, they are so out of this world in terms of the action that the person just taking your AR-15, going into like a small pizza restaurant and then end up shooting. He said that it sort of reminds him of what he sees in Shakespearean tragedy. And if you look at the tragedy, in many of these tragedies, there you have these protagonists that he's a hero at the beginning of the story, and throughout this story, throughout this process, he sort of turned into opposite of himself. It's detrimental actions that he brings on himself. In many of them, especially the Othello that we have mentioned in the paper, it's really the sort of falsehood, the lies that he ends up believing and sort of changes his life. And I've been working on social media research for more than a decade. That's one of my main research areas. So he suggested that how about we start thinking about this, see if we can explain how this works.
In essence, social media algorithms are kind of the villain in this story.
So the short answer is partly.
Okay.
The
It's never that clear.
It's never that clear, yes. So the reason is, let me explain a little bit of a tragedy that we mentioned in the paper. One of the tragedies that we discuss and we sort of borrow the ideas from is the tragedy of Othello. Othello is the general of the Venetian army, a very high commander, and he has a wife, he loves his wife. And there's another character in the Othello, which is the antagonist, and his name is Iago. Iago is a soldier in that army that Othello passed over for promotion. He was, because of that, upset with Othello. So in order to sort of get back at Othello, what Iago does is that he made up this lie that Othello's wife is sleeping with another lieutenant in the army. And he starts sort of making up evidence, false evidence, fake evidence. And throughout this sort of play, Othello at first he had a lot of doubt, that he started believing in this lie, and sort of this lie gets reinforced by the false evidence that Iago was presenting. By the end of the story, Othello ended up killing his own wife, which is the love of his life. And when he realizes that it was just a lie, he ended up taking his own life. So the question really here is social media algorithms the Iago of our story? Now, when we talk about the misinformation, there are people, organizations, individuals, criminal organizations like QAnon who creates this misinformation, these disinformation campaigns. The social media algorithms do not actively create misinformation. They don't produce content, right? But the main role that they play is that they target this misinformation to the right person. They disseminate and propagate the misinformation, not randomly, but trying to target the right audience for the misinformation, sending it, showing it to the user who are much more likely to believe in it, to engage with it. And through that, the social media algorithms significantly increases the reach and the efficiency, the effectiveness of the misinformation. And that's the role of the social media. So that's why I said partly, because it doesn't create it, but it does play a major role in dissemination and propagation of it.
It's targeting.
It is. It's like a targeting marketing, and it is one of the most really effective tools to do that.
Earlier, I mentioned the court case against several social media platforms. Your theory really points to the crux of the lawsuit's argument that these companies pushed out violent, racist misinformation because that's what got clicks. Their algorithm targeted. While they weren't creating it, they were specifically sending it to certain people. Mm-hmm. I'd like to ask your opinion then. How responsible are these companies? How much are they the Iago?
They are responsible. And I think in order to get to that, it would be helpful to talk about how the social media algorithms do that. And many of them are, at least the way it's been explained, it's not intentional. It's a byproduct of what social media platforms are. We have to consider that the social media platforms are ad-selling machines. They are designed to sell ads. And when you are in an ad-selling business, more engagement, more time from the user means more money. So they are designed to send the content to the person who has the higher likelihood of engaging with that content. In the paper, we talk about 4 properties in social media that essentially really comprise the whole social media. The feeding algorithms, all right, all of us, when you open the social media platform, whether it is, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, you have a feed, right? So there are billions and billions of content that potentially can be sent to you by the algorithm. You can see, because there are contents on social media, but choosing which content you see and which content you don't see and what's the curation of that and so on and so forth is the job of the feeding algorithms in social media. Now, they don't do this randomly. These are smart, intelligent algorithms that uses all the information that they have from you, right? And that's when the sensing sort of property, the other property of social media comes in, because they are sensing, they are collecting data and information about the users all the time. As you interact with them more, as you watch the content, the amount of time you spend on the content, the likes that you send, the particular source that you show more interest in the content, any type of engagement you can imagine. They collect more information from you, from your profile, from your friends, the profile of your friends. And these information are all used in order to customize, to identify the content with a higher likelihood of engagement for you. So the feeding algorithms really, if they show misinformation, it's not just a random misinformation, it's a lie that you may not be interested in. There is quite a good chance that you might be interested in that misinformation. It's a topic, it's something that you are interested in. In addition to this, there's another property we talk about, is a signaling property. Social media platforms, they send social signals. They use the social signals to further reinforce the effect of the content, to increase that engagement likelihood. The social signals are, when you look at, let's say, Facebook, you see a content on the Facebook and you see your friend, it shows the name of your friend that your friend has liked it. You see the comment of your friend liking it. LinkedIn, you will see that, okay, you will see a content, particularly when one of your contacts has liked it or has posted it and so on and so forth, and it comes to the top of your feed. These are sort of, when you see the name of your friend, there are research showing that you trust that content more. You are more likely to engage with that content because a trusted person for you has already sort of approved it by liking it or by engaging in it. These are the social signals that the social media platforms sort of knowingly send in order to increase the engagement. And one thing that sort of reinforces these social signals is the fourth property that we talk about in the paper, which is the matching property. These are social networks. They work based on the network of the content, and they are essentially keep matching the users to each other, engaging the users to connect to other users who are more similar to them. And this is really the process through which they create these echo chambers. The byproduct of all these is that when there is a misinformation that is posted on social media, and generally the unfortunate thing is that it's not actively moderated, it is the way it should be, that misinformation is going to be sent to an echo chamber that is more really receiving of this. And then if you are in that echo chamber, not only it may show on your feed, because you are very highly likely to engage with it, you might see also some social signals on it as well, significantly increasing the chance that the person engages with that social media, even believing it. So that's a development and the reinforcement of the falsehood and the false beliefs really for the user. So from this perspective, yes, they are responsible. These algorithms are doing it. They are not intentionally created to disseminate misinformation, of course. They are ad selling machines, but all the people are using it, and misinformation on social media, at least right now, it's not a new topic. It's not a new thing that's happening. So these algorithms are also targeting misinformation to the right audience, the audience who engage with them. The other answer to this question, that are they responsible or not, is how come the social media platform have been able to do this? That goes back to a law that we have in the US, Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act of 1996. Interestingly, the Section 230 essentially says that any internet service provider cannot be held responsible as a publisher or as a speaker of the information if they're just showing the information or disseminating the information. So essentially it protects them from liability. And this is what social media companies really use in order to, although they moderate the content to some extent, to say that they are not liable. And it gives them not 100%, but quite a broad sort of immunity from legal liability. Interestingly, Section 230 came about in order to protect the internet and in order to actually encourage moderation. Back in 1990s, early days of internet and online forums and message boards, right, there were two companies, CompuServe and Prodigy, with two different policies. CompuServe sort of decided not to moderate the message board at all. It was a completely open, similar to 8chan and 4chan. These are some of the main really platforms for misinformation have been in the recent years. So they were not moderating at all. Prodigy wanted to create more family-oriented environment, so they were moderating the content. And really the focus was mostly on sexual content and pornographic content and so on. Now, both of them got sued by some users because of the content. In the court, CompuServe was not held liable because the judge essentially argued that they were not moderating the content. They were just allowing any content that content was appear to, so they're not responsible. Prodigy was actually held responsible because they were actively moderating, and the judge said that you are more of a newspaper and publisher. So it's partly your fault that sort of content showed up. That didn't sit well with the Congress, right? The Congress thought that if they let this happen, go forward, first of all, the internet becomes a Wild West because nobody's going to moderate anything. And again, it's 1990s, they were sort of concerned that that can hamper the growth of the internet at the time. So then the Section 230 came about, and it was around the same time that they were talking about the Communication Decency Act, which was an act in the Congress to stop or penalize the dissemination of pornographic content to the minors. And they added the Section 230 to it. That has been the case in the US since then, and the social media companies have been protected under this, although we see a lot of misinformation being disseminated on that. It has been sort of changing, and that's why they have not been held responsible in the US, but it has been changing around the world. In 2022, the European Union came up with a new law called Digital Services Act. In the Digital Services Act, one thing that's very interesting in there is that they are providing not as broad of an immunity, legal immunity that the Section 230 is providing what they call the conditional liability exemptions. Meaning that the sort of internet service providers, including, and this is quite broad, it's not just for social media, it's for the marketplaces, for goods and services and content included, they will not be held accountable for the content on their platforms if they meet the three conditions. The condition is that they don't know about that content, that sort of damaging content like misinformation. They have set up notice and action mechanism to fight illegal content. So they have the mechanism in place, but they were not aware of that this particular content was on their platform. And they would remove and disable access to that content the moment they realize that it exists, meaning that they cannot really profit from it, and they should actually show that they have taken action in order to take it down. So that is changing the space here. They are not, although they still have some protection because they want to protect the moderation, they want to encourage the moderation, but at the same time, they are putting some condition on that immunity in order to encourage more active moderation.
Kind of walking a pretty fine line.
It is a very sensitive topic. So are they responsible? Well, they are disseminating it. I believe that, and that's what we discussed in the paper, and there are a lot of research on it as well, that without social media, these misinformation, disinformation campaigns wouldn't have been even closely effective. You have this really strong tool at your disposition for propagating misinformation. So yes, that the responsibility falls on them from this perspective.
If it's found that these platforms are responsible for the content posted on them, how can they really police it? And that seems kind of like it could be a slippery slope that could lead to issues of censorship and free speech violations potentially.
And one thing we have to note is that same Section 230 also protects them from legal liability if they remove or censor content on their platforms, as long as they do it in the good faith. And any content that they see damaging, as long as they remove it in good faith, they are not legally liable. One thing that some of these platforms are doing is, and they can do more in my opinion, is that they crowdsource the moderation. They get help from the users. They allow the users to flag it, to report a content, and then they responsibly review that content in order to see whether that content is a problematic content or not. And you can imagine on social media that when there's a misinformation, somebody would report that. So that would help with the effectiveness of the moderation. So I don't think at least under the current law, it would be, because it encourages the moderation, it would be the violation of the First Amendment. We just need some stronger laws in order to motivate the social media companies to take the misinformation more seriously. Without those laws, you should know that this misinformation, they are designed, they are written in a way, they're developed in a way to attract attention and sort of encourage action. That's the malicious intention of the creators. So it works well in increasing the engagement. So we need to encourage the social media companies to take this seriously and use less of it as engaging mechanisms on the platform. So I think that's where the moderation should go.
What responsibility then does the public have in all of this? I mean, and furthermore, how can we kind of reclaim our power from these platforms?
That's a very good question. I think that a few points that comes to my mind. One is really the basics of information literacy. Just understanding how we should verify a claim, any claim, including the claims that we saw on social media platform, against its facts, against its source. What are the source of these facts, right? Are they credible sources? Cross-examining the claims with other sources. If there is a claim that's coming from this particular source and there is no trace of it anywhere else, it's highly likely that it is not factual, or at least the facts are not as common or as accepted. These are really the basics of the information literacy, to be able to verify the information that we decide to engage with, read, or believe, especially sharing it. Definitely, we have to verify the information that we share. There was a research that shows that a lot of the dissemination of the misinformation, fake news, on social media is not the job of bots or sort of automated algorithms or automated users. They are active users. They receive this.
We're the problem.
Yes, they receive this. They are they receive it. It's not a random content. Of course, that content, they see it because the algorithms know that you're going to be very interested in it, and then they share it. This sharing and resharing and resharing and resharing is how the dissemination happens. So if you bring the information literacy in, that, okay, verify before sharing, verify before believing, and how to verify it, and how to get the facts right, be able to separate the emotions and sort of confirmation biases from the facts that you see in the content, right? You don't want to believe in falsehood, regardless of what that falsehood is. You always want to believe in the truth, even if you are very emotional about the content. Sort of prioritizing this, these are really the basics of information literacy that can help sort of to reclaim. One other thing, with respect to social media platforms, we have to sort of consider these are addictive platforms. They are addictive because, and that goes back to another research that I have on the addiction of the social media platforms. They're addictive because, again, they have designed very well. These are some of the best designed sort of IT artifacts out there. They are designed to increase the engagement, and they do it very effectively. What does engagement mean? It means that you spend more and more time on it. It gets so much that it sort of fill up your life, right? And it becomes hard to withdraw from it. That is what the behavioral addiction looks like. That's why they are addictive platforms. We did a research. We looked at the users and their level of addiction to the social media platforms, and what is the response to that addiction, how do they react to it, and what's the level of psychological well-being. First of all, we found that 16% of the users that we collected data from were very addicted to social media. And there was a profile of these users who were addicted that they had a very low level of psychological well-being, passing the threshold for clinical depression, because they were feeling that they're trapped within this social media. They cannot reclaim their life, right? They don't want to use it anymore, but they have to use it because that's become their life. And some of them have realized that this is not the whole world, but they're just living in it. They're spending hours and hours every day on social media platform. Of course, when you spend a lot of time on it, there's much higher likelihood that you are exposed to misinformation on it, because they are being spreading on there. It's more likely you get your news, your information from it, and then that becomes your word more and more and more. Then that's how the confirmation biases start creating. It becomes much more difficult that when you see another misinformation, another claim, to go ahead and verify that, because you already have this strong confirmation bias. So understand that it's addictive. Understand that you have to sort of treat it as an addictive substance. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't use it at all, but you should have control over your use, right? How much you use it, what you use it for, and so on and so forth. That is very important. The final thing that I mentioned is that we should really never get our news, our truth, our information from social media. If we are really looking for truth, we are looking for a comprehensive representation of the information from all aspects. We want a complete truth. And the social media is not designed for that. Social media is not designed to show you all the content or randomly show you content. It has been designed just to show you the content that you're going to like. And there are other probably aspects to a truth, to a phenomena, to a matter that I'm not going to like. I may have some biases, right? So if you're looking for news, if you're looking for truth, social media is not a platform to get your news, your information, your truth from it. We have to look at it as probably more of an entertainment, hedonic platform, like gaming platforms. Use it for that purpose, or communicating with our contacts. But if we are looking for news, for truths, for something that we want to put our judgment based on, and then it's going to affect our beliefs and take action. Of course, not all of them are completely something that we are aware of. Social media is not a platform to do that. So we should not go for the news, even if you are following some news channels. Because again, if you're following those, you probably do not see every single content that those news channels like CNN, Fox, or whatever are posting. The algorithms are going to show you the ones that are more likely for you to engage with them and going to like them more. So I think These three together probably would create more awareness, would empower the users to be more careful about the claims they see. Not everything you see, not everything that your friend or even the most trusted person for you who shares is necessarily true. When you are believing it and you're resharing it, you're responsible for what you're doing. So probably you have to verify it before doing it. And understanding that the social media platform is not designed to give you the truth.
So beware what you're watching and where you're getting your information, and leave social media to the pictures of the family reunion and cats. Am I right?
That sounds good to me.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.
CSU Assistant Professor Hamed Khoury-Saremi researches online social platforms and artificial intelligence systems and how they influence our behaviors. I'm your host, Stacey Nick, and you're listening to CSU's The Audit.